Today we're going to be talking about conscious consumerism, or being aware of really what you're putting your dollar towards. So my name's Charlie, this is Hannah. I'm going to be covering some kind of sad but reality facts. Hannah's going to talk about her time in Tanzania, and then we're going to cover how you can be more aware while shopping, like through the grocery store. So livestock and livestock feed occupy 1/3 of the Earth's ice-free surface, meaning all the food needed to feed the livestock and the livestock themselves occupy 1/3 of the Earth's ice-free surface. Just let that sink in for a little bit. So animal agriculture is one of the top 3 leading causes of climate change. As well, it's led to ocean dead zones, habitat destruction, and extreme water pollution. An ocean dead zone is areas in the ocean with such low oxygen concentration that animals aren't able to survive. So from here, I'm going to pass it off to Hannah, and she's going to focus on her time in Tanzania.
Yeah, so I had an incredible time experiencing the different livelihoods that people have and how different our diverse perspectives culturally as well as consumers differ throughout the world. So let me introduce you to the Maasai of Simanjiro, Tanzania, which was the tribe that I stayed with for a section of last summer. The Maasai are semi-nomadic pastoralists, meaning that they largely depend upon their livestock for their way of life. Pastoralism is considered a more sustainable practice in raising livestock because rather than staying in one area and using the same resources again and again, they're moving from area to area and allowing the land to regenerate and recover before returning back to the same area. Unfortunately, a lot of governments throughout the world do not recognize pastoralism because it doesn't directly incorporate within the global or national economy. Instead, they largely trade amongst themselves. As a result, these governments are allowing land rights of areas that Maasai and other pastoralists depended upon historically to be sold to large corporations and businesses such as agriculture corporations and to take up the land that was so much depended upon by these groups. As a result, Maasai and other pastoralists have been forced to settle into areas and deplete the resources in one specific location in order to have access to these lands. This results, obviously, in a less sustainable practice, but it also takes away from their cultural and practices as far as their culture is concerned. So obviously this has a big part to play in the policy and government policies that have been put into place. But also the corporations and businesses that are taking over this land and these resources are making an impact. A simple way to mind this gap is simply by communicating with the local community members. This not only helps the community members themselves, but the ecosystem that is being taken advantage of. Now, communication may seem pretty easy in places like the United States, but in locations like Tanzania, where over 120 languages are being spoken, you can see how communication is a challenge. To make things even more difficult, a lot of these areas are not connected by roads that are accessible to most vehicles. But the advantages of communicating with these community members is actually far outweigh the cost. For one reason, it helps both the community members themselves with their practices, the ecosystem and the usages of these natural resources, as well as the business themselves. So they are able to come into an area and put in place a more responsive mission for consumers that are buying their products, as well as have a more long-term set in place in order to produce their products in the long term. So this brings us to our 3 S objectives that we feel are important for companies to take into account when setting up their businesses. The first being the system stability, or incorporating and realizing the different doctrines that are in place and how they are affecting both the land and the people around them. The second being the sustainable practices, which we talked about as far as how land and water resources and all of these other resources are coming into play. And the third, simply being involving stakeholders. So communicating, again, with those community members, as well as other groups that are taking advantage of these same resources, so we don't have issues of tragedy of the commons and overexploitation. My experiences in Tanzania were life-changing in many ways, but coming back to the United States, I was left with a sense of helplessness and wanted to know more about how consumerism can change what is going on throughout the world, both locally and on an international level. So I would like you to think about this question. What can you as a consumer do to make a difference?
It's a great question. So I'm going to dive into B corporations, which is what we have talked about in class. For those of you that don't know what a B Corp is, companies do have to have large social or big social and environmental initiatives within their organization. They do have to pass through several tests through B Corp's third-party B Lab. And as Hannah said, she kind of came back hopeless and didn't know what to do. And kind of back to how I was talking about animal agriculture, I do want to state that animal agriculture has provided so many meals for so many people, but we wanted to cover how the animal agriculture business is depleting and exhausting our natural resources. And these are companies that are doing something against that and trying to make a change against the amount of land that's been destroyed due to animal agriculture. So for the first company, as I'm sure you've all heard of, Patagonia, but I wanted to share just a few stories on Patagonia and that you might not have heard of. So my really good friend works at the Patagonia Boulder store, and that store alone was allocated $75,000 for the sales associates to decide where the money went in the Boulder area. So Patagonia the sales associates chose to sponsor Growing Gardens, which Growing Gardens is a nonprofit, and their whole mission is to spread sustainable urban agriculture within the Boulder area. The next company I want to talk about is Goyaki, which you all have in your hand right now. As you can see on the bottom of the can, they do have their B Corp certification on the can. As well, they have their mission right on the can. Goyaki's mission is to restore over 200,000 acres of the South American Atlantic rainforest and create 1,000 living wage jobs. So who here has had yerba mate before? Cool. So it's kind of 50-50. For those of you that haven't, mate is a caffeinated plant grown in South America, traditionally drank out of a gourd with a bombilla, which is a filtered straw. As shown, Obama here is drinking mate. Big fan. But how they source their mate in South America is through, they support shade-grown mate. So they work with local indigenous communities and local farmers. So in this next photo, here's a photo in 1900, and the dark area is what of the South American Atlantic rainforest was left. And then to the next one is 1940, so you can see it's gone down a little bit. 1970, definitely gone down a bit. And in 5 years, we've taken down the South American Atlantic rainforest to this small amount for monocropping to grow the feed for animal agriculture and for animal agriculture alone, the livestock themselves, for us and other people around the world to eat red meat. So companies like Goyaki are focusing on restoring these areas like this. So through each can bought, you're just supporting a company that their whole goal is to restore 200,000 acres. And currently, so their goal is by 2020, and they're at 185,000 acres restored already, and they've created 925 living wage jobs. And by doing that, they work with, like I said, they work with those local indigenous communities and farmers, and they pay them twice the wage of their previous job and educate them on how to grow and restore the rainforest, which one level of that rainforest is the yerba mate plant. The next company I want to talk about is United by Blue. They take 1 pound of trash out of their waterways for each product sold, and they're organizing cleanups all around the United States. You can go to their website right now and volunteer to help at one of their cleanups. They did one right in Denver, and they're out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And then the last company who's B Corp certified is 10 Tree, which we talked about. And kind of cool, we learned from the inside perspective, which you should share with people, is they don't really actually plant 10 trees. They plant 15 or 20 like they said, because they want to make sure that those 10 trees really do grow. So now that I just talked about a few of the companies that you could support, maybe check out B Corp's website, and they have a long list. There's over 2,000 companies that are B Corp certified, and make sure to just look out for your conscious consumerism, and be aware of that B Corp logo. So Hannah's going to close us out.
So conscious consumerism is actually much more simple than you make it out to be. By looking into the businesses that you're supporting through the things that you are buying on a daily basis, you are really making a difference. Looking and researching at those social environmental initiatives that these businesses are taking and investing into are critical ways to get started. Again, those 3S objectives about the system stability, the sustainability of the land, and the stakeholder involvement are critical for making a lasting impact in your consumerism. A simple way to just get started is by looking for those B Corp's labeled products and grabbing those off of the shelf first. Thank you.